Welcome to The Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're joining us today. We're going to go ahead and put on our tech ethicist hats because we're exploring what is arguably the single greatest tension of our time. We are literally standing at the edge of a monumental shift. We're looking at this massive wave of artificial intelligence and synthetic biology, and it promises some unbelievable innovation. But, with that immense power comes a really profound societal risk. So we've got to figure out how to balance these two extremes, and honestly, the stakes could not be higher.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's the absolute crux of our entire discussion today. How in the world do we put guardrails on a technology, one driven by AI, quantum computing, and robotics, that's evolving at a breakneck, totally unmanageable speed? I mean, it's moving way faster than our regulations, faster than our safety frameworks, and honestly, in some cases, faster than we can even comprehend it. How exactly do you contain something that literally changes shape every single week?
Now, before we get too deep into the heavy stuff, I want to just address something you might already be feeling. When we talk about the massive risks of AI, it's completely natural to just want to look away. Mustafa Suleyman, the co-founder of DeepMind, actually calls this pessimism aversion. It's basically our innate psychological resistance to facing the dark side of new tools. We all love the convenience of the shiny new thing, right? So we just naturally kind of ignore the threat. But to truly understand the coming wave, we've got to push past that aversion and confront the potential failures head-on. Trust me on this. Facing the scary parts is literally the only way we're going to get to the actual solutions. All right, moving into Section 1, the economics of co-intelligence. So to really wrap our heads around the macro-level threat, we first need to look at how we interact with these tools on an individual level. And that brings us to Ethan Mollick's brilliant concept of co-intelligence. Mollick suggests that we actually need to stop viewing AI as just another software program. Instead, we should start treating it as a co-intelligent partner. Think of it as a tool for your own personal and creative empowerment. Whether you're summarizing massive texts, writing code, or evaluating huge data sets, we are all currently learning how to live and work right alongside a non-human intelligence.
But here is absolutely the most critical thing to remember about this new digital coworker. Today's AI is the worst AI you will ever use. Just let that sink in for a second. We're in the middle of a hyper-evolution. The baseline for this technology is only moving upward. So that slightly clunky, occasionally helpful chatbot you might be using today, that is the absolute floor of what this technology is going to be capable of tomorrow.
So, as the AI gets exponentially better, what happens to us humans? Well, let's think like an economist for a second. Economists basically view AI as a prediction machine. It dramatically drops the cost of making predictions. And basic economics tells us that when the cost of a foundational tool drops, the value of its complement skyrockets. So, the things machines cannot master, like human judgment, contextual understanding, moral action, and empathy, those become infinitely more valuable. We don't need to try and compete on prediction anymore. We need to double down on our judgment.
If you want to harness AI effectively, Mollick and other researchers suggest a few practical rules for everyday use. You want to invite AI to the table and experiment constantly with different models. But always be the human in the loop. Treat the AI like a person, sure, but you need to proactively define its persona. And this brilliantly illustrates why we have to provide what's called cognitive slack. We just can't let AI make us so blindly busy that we lose our flexibility and our oversight. We absolutely need that mental space to adapt and actually evaluate what the AI is producing for us.
Which takes us to Section 2. Creativity versus hallucination.
So what exactly happens when the machine produces something that's just entirely wrong? Well, that's when we run into one of its biggest inherent technical flaws, which is known as a hallucination. This is when the AI generates content that's either factually incorrect or just completely ungrounded from the source material. And the terrifying part isn't just that the AI is wrong, it's that the AI operates as this totally opaque black box, and it eloquently, confidently states these totally unsupported claims as if they're absolute truth. And you could imagine, in a scientific or a medical context, a highly confident lie is incredibly dangerous.
So how are we supposed to catch these hallucinations? Well, as you can see, our current methods are really struggling. If we just use simple detection, like looking for mismatched capitalized words, it's way too simple. It ends up overflagging things and marks creative metaphors as errors. Then you have semantic tools like Mirage, which are great at capturing semantic drift, but they end up penalizing perfectly legitimate teaching analogies. And then there's my personal favorite, just using another AI as a judge to grade the first one. It understands context better, sure, but it's wildly inconsistent, and sometimes the AI judge will literally invent its own hallucinations.
So the crucial point is this. Our detection systems are basically caught in a trap. If we make the detection rules too strict, we get a ton of false positives, and we risk overpenalizing the exact creativity and pedagogical analogies that make AI so amazing for explaining complex topics in the first place. But on the flip side, if we make it too loose, we fail to catch critical conceptual errors. Our current inability to perfectly detect and filter out these factual errors makes the unchecked spread of these models, well, highly precarious.
Moving right along to Section 3, the dilemma of containment.
Now let's zoom out a bit. What happens when you take those individual flaws and scale them all the way up to the macro, geopolitical stage? This is where we enter the realm of containment. Mustafa Suleyman outlines containment as our ability to control, limit, and if absolutely necessary, shut down emerging technologies. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? But here is the chilling historical context for you. Containing general-purpose technologies has proven to be almost impossible throughout human history. Once a fire is lit or a printing press is built, that idea spreads like wildfire.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how AI presents a totally unique threat to the stability of nation-states, and it comes down to a few specific characteristics of this coming wave. First, it has an asymmetric impact. That means a single individual could potentially wield the power of a small country. Second, it hyper-evolves. Third, it's omni-use, meaning the exact same tech could be used to write a beautiful poem or to engineer a deadly pathogen. And crucially, it's becoming increasingly autonomous. It's operating without human oversight. Put those four traits together, and this coming wave becomes uniquely difficult to just bottle up.
And that brings us to the ultimate crossroads dilemma. Think about it. If we leave this hyper-evolving, highly autonomous AI entirely uncontained, we're risking catastrophic havoc. We're talking massive cyber attacks, automated warfare, even systemic collapse. But if governments try to strictly contain it, well, the only way to effectively monitor everyone's laptops in biology labs is to risk creating a deeply invasive authoritarian dystopia. So we're looking at total catastrophe and chaos on one side and total authoritarian surveillance on the other.
Let's explore how we get out of this in Section 4, Forging a Narrow Path.
It's a pretty terrifying binary, isn't it? So how do governments and ethicists actually navigate this? Well, we have to forge what Suleyman calls the narrow path. Look, while full containment might seem historically impossible, we absolutely cannot surrender to that pessimism aversion we talked about earlier. The immense benefits of AI, things like curing diseases, solving the clean energy crisis, lifting up global economies, they mean we have to find a way to make it serve human needs. We've got to balance those absolutely crucial safety regulations with the momentum of continued, highly beneficial innovation.
So how exactly do we do that? First, we have to engineer safety directly into the intelligence itself. We build these internal technical guardrails right into the models. It starts with careful prompt engineering to guide the AI safely from the get-go. Then we use something called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, which forces the AI to actually anchor its answers in verified facts to help mitigate those dangerous hallucinations. We can also fine-tune these models for highly regulated domains. And finally, we use RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback, to actually align the model's reward system with real human ethics.
But here's the thing. Technical fixes just aren't going to be enough on their own. Let's move to these geopolitical strategies and see how this builds into a bigger solution. This is where governments have to step in to enforce containment without totally suffocating progress. We're talking about instituting mandatory independent safety audits. It means governments need to leverage hardware choke points, like strictly controlling the distribution of the highly specialized microchips you need to train these massive models. And maybe most importantly, we have to align the massive financial incentives of these huge tech companies with global safety rather than just a race for raw processing power.
Which leaves us right here. AI is absolutely no longer just some futuristic concept. It's the coworker sitting on your desk right now, and it's the geopolitical wave crashing on our shores. As we stand at the edge of this incredible, terrifying wave, the choice is ultimately ours. Are we going to actively build the technical and societal guardrails required to guide it, or are we going to let pessimism aversion cause us to just look away until the wave sweeps us away entirely? It's a profound question, and one we all have a responsibility to answer. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.